You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Inside the Black and Gold. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
And Michael House.
This week on Under the Shell, we're pleased to welcome on Maryland offensive lineman Isaiah Wright. Isaiah, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, let's just get started. Obviously, you're off to a 2-0 start. You've been playing really well, kind of been, I think, the stalwart of Maryland's offensive line early on in the season. Can you just kind of tell us through the first two games what it's been like blocking for Malik Washington, and has the offense met what your expectations were?
Yeah, Malik is a great guy. You know, he's a team-oriented person, really dedicated to the game. So it's easy, wanting to protect him on and off the field. You know, he's an example of, what a man for a young guy, what a man should be, and what an athlete or a collegiate football athlete should be as well. So it's a privilege, and I'm lucky to have him as a quarterback. As an offense, I think that we're performing really well. And the beautiful thing about it is we still have a lot of room to grow. So I think as the season goes on, we're just going to get better and better and execute even better. And, sky's the limit when it comes to this offense.
As someone like yourself who's spent many years in college football and now made a return after injury, what is your favorite part about being a leader on the offensive side?
I think just being there for my teammates, with anything that's going on, they could come to me when it comes to football, school, things that are happening at home, just overall tips and wisdom for anything in life, because, I've been their age, because we got really young guys, and then we got, some guys who are my age as well. So just being there and just, having that team around you, it's a great thing, and that camaraderie is something that you can't really reflect when football is over. So I don't take it for granted.
For the upcoming game against Towson, obviously an FCS opponent, but what is Loxley telling you? What are the coaches telling you to make sure you guys are still focused and don't overlook that game?
Yeah, so our mindset is really the vision. You know what I'm saying? Not being distracted on outside sources, not getting too high with the highs and too low with the lows. Just staying on track and just maintaining our team standard when it comes to practice, games, and school, and all those things that incorporate to a successful football team.
You suffered the injury last year, a torn Achilles. I read that it was in practice. You kind of just took a misstep. Take us through that injury. I've heard that just through talking to athletes, it doesn't actually really hurt as much as what you would expect, but you kind of just paint the picture for the injury, and then when you knew that it was as serious as it ended up being.
Yeah, so we were doing a simple conditioning exercise that I've done a million times, and like you said, took a bad step. Not even a bad step. I took a regular step, and the tendon just went, and I knew right away. Like you said, it didn't really hurt, but you could feel the pop. You know what I'm saying? And when you try to take another step, you could feel something's off. So I knew it was pretty serious when it initially happened. And then obviously we did the MRIs and all that kind of stuff later during the day that kind of confirmed what it was. But yeah, it wasn't it was very unfortunate. I just got to the university and I was really excited for the year that was to come. But things happen, and thankfully I have a great support system, and everybody in the building kind of had my back. So it's been a long road, but I'm happy to be back.
You emulated Kobe and Rogers, who both suffered torn Achilles. I also read. Can you just take us through, or in the audience, what you did in your recovery process and why you chose to look at those two guys?
Yeah, so I was, it's a common, not a common injury. It's a well-known injury, but not as common. So whenever anything happened, like me trying to, be a great football player, I always look to the greats and people who've done it before me. So when it came to this injury, I knew Kobe was, one of the top guys who came back from this injury, and so I instantly went to him. And Rogers was similar, and was probably the most recent guy who suffered the injury. So me going to them was just kind of like a no-brainer. What did they do? Those guys are elite football players and basketball players. So uh, what can I do that they do to improve my recovery? So I saw Kobe Bryant. He was getting in a hyperbaric chamber, which is basically a chamber that uh, forces oxygen into your body, and it kind of speeds up recovery. It's great for your brain, and overall recovery for your whole body. Aaron Rodgers, he was real strict with his diet, so I didn't do any kind of crazy like keto diet or intermittent fasting. But talking with the nutritionist Lauren, she was saying that everything that you eat is basically nutrients for your injury. So everything is just going straight to that part of your body. So I was just really intentional with my diet. And Aaron Rodgers mentioned that bone broth had a lot of something called glutamine, which is great for tendon health. So yeah, I was just trying to implement everything that they did, how they approached treatment and rehab, and it helped a lot. So, yeah.
You didn't do a darkness retreat though.
Nah, nah. Nah, I saw that on his documentary, but didn't have the time to do that. But did try, get right with God and meditate. What I'm saying, trying to keep my mind right. But yeah, no retreat.
Yeah, no, obviously keeping your mental health, strong when you have an injury like that is important. In terms of specifically your diet, would you say, out now after injury, you've continued to focus on that as something that you prioritize?
Yeah, I've always prioritized my diet, but during my injury, it was real uh, important to me to make sure I'm getting everything in, all kinds of nutrients, taking supplements and things to that manner. So yeah, still to this day, I'm still pretty diligent with my diet, and that's something that's really important to me, my overall health. So yeah, yep.
You seem like a pretty well versatile guy, just looking at your story. Can you take us through some of the hobbies you have off the field? Because I feel like a lot of football players just really dedicate themselves to, football. And that's not to say that you're not dedicated to the game, but being able to find passions outside of it. What are some things that you enjoy? And kind of take us through what a Isaiah Wright hobby looks like.
Yeah, so I'm blessed enough to have a great mom who kind of encouraged me to try all kinds of things. So some of my hobbies, they, very obviously, being a football player, I don't do it every day, and I wish I could do it more often. But it's part of the job. But I think one of my main hobbies right now is probably I'm trying to get back into playing the piano a lot more. That's something I've done since I was a kid, and it's something that has been with me my whole life. I like to write all kinds of writing, just jotting stuff down. It could be my thoughts, or it could just be some kind of story, poem, anything. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to be as creative as I possibly can. Picked up reading again. So I'm reading the Odyssey right now. I want to finish the book before the movie comes out, because I know that's coming out soon. And I'm trying to get better at chess. So yeah, I do that. And and yeah, that's pretty much it. Listening to music whenever I can. Yep.
You said your mom was a big impact in your life. Can you just talk about your relationship with her and why she was able to kind of make such a profound impact on you, other than just being your mom, which
Yeah.
obviously which obviously is a big reason.
No, for sure. I think she was just she is a great example of perseverance and determination. I think that's where I get my work ethic from and my stubbornness from, which is her. Just seeing her throughout whatever she was going through, just her ability to bounce back and to get the job done. You know what I'm saying? So I have so much respect and love for her, and appreciation to have someone like that as my mom, and just being an example for me and my siblings from a young age. Uh, so yeah, I don't take that relationship for granted at all.
I know one of your other practices before a game is listening to gospel music before you kind of get ready. When did that tradition start, and like why have you carried through it, doing it to this day?
Yeah, I think it started. I want to say during my college career. I can't pinpoint exactly when, but it was pretty early. But I think yeah, just I think I'm thankful for football because it's one of the things that I think brings me closer to God. Because with football, you do have a lot of adversity, and so that kind of draws you closer to a higher power, and you reaching for something bigger than yourself, for poise and just an overall better mindset. So gospel music before, it's not. Um, sometimes you could go to church and they could play, the real slow stuff, and then sometimes they could get up tempo, and the energy could be a lot higher. And so I just think that it kind of focuses me back on God, and it's kind of a way to kind of lock in my mind on one thing, and to put my faith in God before I do something that's bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Maryland's offensive line in recent years it's no secret, has been a weak point of the program. Um, there was a lot of critiques during the Talia days, and dating back even before that. How much did you kind of consider what the program was, and how much do you kind of take it upon yourself to show that the unit is in a weak spot this season, and just kind of overall within the program?
So I think right as soon as the season ended, Coach talked about elevating, and so he did what he had to do to elevate the program. And I think that as players, it was important for us to take ownership in what we could do. So when especially when Coach Pep came in, um, and we had a new offense, and it was time to really get into the playbook. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of extra lifts, a lot of time outside of football just to get closer as a unit. So I think just to have our performance reflect the work that we put in throughout the whole off season was really important to us. And we still have room to grow, and to become better and more tight as the season goes on. But I think for everybody in the unit, we just want to represent the team and ourselves and our families the best way that we possibly can, and that's just improving our performance. So, as an offensive lineman and as a unit, you want to be the backbone of the team, and so you do the things that you have to do to be able to do that day by day. And I'm so thankful for the guys that we have in that room right now, because the dedication that they bring every day is amazing. No matter what you ask them to do, they're down to get the work in, and they're not afraid of any kind of challenge that you place in front of them. So a lot of brave, mature, dedicated guys in the offensive line room. And so, the whole team is lucky to have them.
I'll leave you with this question. I know that past football, you're interested in working in film and probably sports documentaries. If there was going to be a football documentary about your career, what would the title be?
Whew, on the spot, the title, probably just like legacy. Just probably just say legacy, just because I think you're in control of your destiny and the story that's written. So every day that you show up and you go to work, you kind of represent yourself, and the way you treat people. And so your legacy at the end of the day is kind of what people are going to remember you by. And yeah, I think that's important to me. Just the overall my own legacy and what people are going to know me when I'm gone. So. Yep.
And last one for you, Isaiah. You know, you talked about Loxley saying you wanted to kind of revamp the program this offseason. One thing he mentioned was he felt like he lost the locker room last year. Felt like there was kind of, and just talking to players, qualms over NIL, disagreements about how much one player made, how much another one made. You're an older guy. You kind of, you got to see last year's locker room from an off-field perspective, and now you're in it playing. Did you feel that last year as the season was happening, and does it feel different in the early goings of this season?
Yeah, I think the landscape of college football is changing a lot, and so I think that year was uh, uh, it was just guys overall just getting used to the changes, and some people took it personally, and it's normal for things like that to happen, especially with such a drastic change. Um, but I think this year, I think guys are just focused on winning football games and knowing that, if we succeed as a team, everybody's individual goals will most likely come to fruition, um, based off of just overall success of a program. You know what I'm saying? So I think everybody's dialed in and locked in on just the overall team success and not really too focused on individual success. And I think Coach Locks did a great job with, we had a team event during a team meeting. It was called Our Brother's Keeper. And basically it was like a random question that was put on the board, and you got into small groups and you change groups every day. And you basically just asked something that was pretty personal, and guys, just opened up and just gave into what we were trying to do. And so I think as a team, we just got extremely close, and we even had some coaches stand up and say that part. So I think that was really important. So I think we just grew closer as a team through all the hard work, and through those kind of meetings, we just got to know one another. And so I think we're just a tighter team.
Definitely. Well, we really appreciate you hopping on, Isaiah. Good luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Before we get back to the show, a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature chili sauce. And don't forget their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in Seiki Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here's more Under the Shell.
Back to the show and back to talking about Maryland football. Let's talk Terps win over Northern Illinois on Friday. 20-9 victory over the Huskies. Kind of a disappointing performance if you can take that away from a win. Mike Loxley constantly talks about how the biggest improvement is between week 1 and week 2. But guys, I feel like in a lot of areas we saw actually points of a regression from Maryland, particularly offensively. They didn't look great for most of the game. The touchdown pass that on a key, it was a third or fourth down. I can't remember.
Shalik Knott. That was a fourth down pass.
Fourth down play, yeah.
He seems like he's not 1 year away. I'll just say that.
No, I also...
that's just...
We'll see. Once he gets into conference play, I don't know. But that ball probably shouldn't have been caught. In reality, the defensive back completely overran Washington's throw. I think that there are positives to take away. I think that there are going to be games where, teams are really going to force Maryland to beat them with the running game. And Malik has to be able to kind of stand up in those situations. I thought he played okay. Overall, I'd give it kind of a C+ grade. But realistically, the biggest concern for me out of that game, Mike, was just the inability to run the football. Another kind of dismal performance on the ground, averaging around 3.5 yards per carry, almost worse than their season opener, which Loxley said wasn't good enough. So I think that the run blocking needs to improve, but also, Nolan Ray and Dejon Williams, outside of a couple, decent 10+ yard runs, there wasn't really much there on the ground. How concerned are you with that running game?
Definitely very concerned. And for the reasons you just spelled out, you have a freshman starting at quarterback. There's going to be times where you need that run game to complement him. There's going to be games where the defense, gets him in a little bit of trouble. And if you don't have any support from the running game, that's not going to help Malik at all. So Nolan Ray, 11 carries, 50 yards, average 4.5 yards per carry. Looks decent on paper, but when you're watching the game, the running game does not look well at all. DeJuan Williams, like you mentioned, 10 carries for 20 yards, not efficient at all for the Terps. So I do want to say one of the bright sides through these first two games has been the young players on the defense. Again, Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis look really, really good for Maryland. Both of them finished a game against NIU. Zahir Mathis had 5 total pressures. Sidney Stewart had 4. Mathis added his first whole sack against the Huskies. So really promising from them, also really promising from the secondary. But again, the caveat to this is they've really played nobody. And NIU is going to be their toughest non-conference opponent, and that's not really too much of a test for Maryland. They're not going to really face a test at all this upcoming weekend against Towson. So, not to look ahead a little bit, but I'm definitely looking ahead to next week against Wisconsin because I think that's really going to show who this team is.
Yeah, I don't think Wisconsin's necessarily great either, and we'll talk way more about that game that week. But I do want to touch on one thing you said, Mike, the secondary. Brendan, I think rightfully you called it a weakness entering the year because of just how bad it was last season. But I've actually thought it's probably been the team's biggest strength so far. Jamari Glasker and Dante Joyner, kind of the two transfers that Maryland brought in, have looked really, really sticky. Glasker did exit the game late on Friday. I'll hope to find out more during Mike Loxley's availability. We're recording this Monday, so it'll come out after that. We'll kind of have a better sense. But I think that they've played really, really well. And then that's allowed Kevin Humes, who had to play a ton of outside DB last year and was frankly burnt toast, to move inside. And I think he's a much more natural fit kind of at that nickel position. And then you do have two veteran safeties in Lavian Scruggs and Jalen Husky. So I think that the secondary, again, Mike is absolutely right. The caveat is both passing offenses they've played have been abysmal. Northern Illinois is one of the worst passing offenses in FBS, and you can't really take away anything from the season opener in my eyes. So I'm very interested to see kind of what that secondary looks like when they first face a test, which honestly might not even come again until they play Washington, who has one of the best receivers in the country, and Denzel Boston. But I'm really, really fascinated to kind of watch the progression of that unit because it was so bad last year. And for them to really flip it around into a strength this season, I think that's a really good work in the portal and also really nice coaching job by Azar Abdul-Rahim. We kind of, were kind of criticizing last year at points because they just kept, I think, putting too many rotations out there, just trying to find a guy, and nobody really emerged. So really good start for Maryland's secondary so far.
I should have known. I mean, if you look at Maryland, at least Loxley over the past 6 years at Maryland, I mean, the one thing that's been very solid has always been the secondary. They haven't always been the best in games, but on paper, they've always been solid. And I think it's actually a bit flipped this year. Obviously, if you look at the draft picks going back to last year, Dante Trader and company, they've been very solid. But I think that was definitely a highlight. You said it. It's not like they've played, some of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. They obviously haven't, but a more promising start than I would have thought. You guys were mentioning defensive side. I thought Daniel Wingate has also looked fantastic. Him and Sidney Stewart, it seems like you hear one of their names every other play on defense. I want to point out two plays from the games that I thought were particularly concerning. The first one was that 74-yard rush that, gave NIU their only touchdown of the game. That is the type of play that you just cannot give up against lower level opponents. I mean, I saw a lot of people saying that Maryland were 2 or 3 plays away from, winning that game by 30. Maryland was also 2 or 3 plays away from, nearly losing that game. It never really felt that close, but, that turnaround of the Washington fumble and then, later on the 74-yard rush, like those 2 plays, you do those things in conference play and those just suck the life out of you and you lose. You do that against Wisconsin, either of those 2 things, you're probably, you're probably looking, that's where a win becomes a loss, just being in the red zone and giving up points. The most, that Washington fumble, him literally putting the ball on the ground, is the most classic freshman college quarterback play you can see. But I think when it's all said and done, Maryland scrapped out a win against a team they obviously should have beat. And at the end of the season, this is not a game you remember. They got the win. And so it's what I've always said about Maryland, just you got to win games and, good teams win. And they found, this is the classic, they found a way to win, but it was ugly.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be saying you found a way to win in game 2 against a non-conference opponent who can't pass the ball.
I mean, that's kind of felt like what happened, honestly. It never felt close, but also
yeah, it was
the game came down to the final couple possessions. It did.
It didn't ever feel, to me, it didn't feel like Maryland was in danger of losing the game, but it did feel like they were kind of bordering on okay, if some crazy stuff happens, this could go the other direction, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, the touchdown pass we're talking about earlier on 4th down, that play probably shouldn't have been a touchdown. I mean, there was another play deep in the end zone where it was a levels concept, and I don't remember the receiver, but he jumped up and
he intercepted it from Octavian.
Yeah, and Octavian Smith was wide open. So, obviously look at that. But hey, I mean, yeah, as I said, they get the win.
Who cares?
Flush it and move on.
Yeah, I think real quick, there's not really much to talk about with Towson. I would expect Maryland probably to win by the most margin of victory they've had so far. So really quick, before we move on to other sports, I want to ask you guys, How would you grade the first 2 games of the season? And then how would you grade Malik Washington through those first 2 games? Brendan, we'll start with you.
I'll start with the team. I would say the overall team is probably a B. They're actually slightly better than I thought. The FAU game was very promising. But I mean, B is like pretty much exactly where I thought they'd be. If we were talking about something else, I would have been surprised. Malik Washington hasn't been unbelievable, but you have to remember that freshman quarterbacks are usually not unbelievable. And if you look at his just general stats, through the first 2 games, he's very strong. So I'll give him a B as well. I mean, not doing anything so far that makes you think, oh my God, this is like the greatest quarterback the Big Ten's ever seen, as Mike thought might have been the case, last week. But also the fact that he's, a freshman quarterback, leading this team, composed, saying all the right things, doing all the right things. It's been a huge bright spot for Maryland. And 2 games in, it gives you a ton of hope for the future.
Yeah, it's hard to put a grade on a team that, again, like I've said, they've played 2 non-conference opponents that really haven't been a test to them at all. But I'll give them a B-. We've seen some areas of concern that we'll be watching later on this season with the run game. But it's been really promising to see how the young players have been playing so far, especially on that defense. Turn into the other young player that everybody's talking about, Malik Washington. I'll also give him a B, Brendan. Not the greatest game for him, but he still finished with over 250 yards passing. So I still don't think it's unreasonable to put that projection as the all-time Big Ten leader in passing yards. We'll still see about that. Sam's shaking his head. But I do want to say...
It's such a bad prediction for so many reasons, but we talked about it last week, so keep going.
Against Northern Illinois, though, I will say after the fumble happened in the third quarter, he did seem to get a little more poised, a little more comfortable, and seemed to regain his composure in the pocket a little bit more. Obviously, the touchdown pass to Shalik Knotts, maybe that should not have been completed, but still ends up being a 40-yard touchdown for him, and he did kind of put the game away there.
Yeah, I'll go pretty similar ratings to you guys. I'll say C+ to start the year. I think the running games looked way worse than I expected. I actually thought it might be a strength, especially I thought they'd used Washington as a runner more. We haven't really seen that much at all. And then Malik, I'll go B- as well. I think it's kind of a contrast, right? Because they're relying on him a ton. He's 4th in the Big Ten in passing yards. But then you look at other stats, and he's kind of near the bottom. Completion percentage, he's 16th in the Big Ten. Passer rating, he's 16th.
To be fair, his completion percentage should be way higher. The amount of drops, which we haven't talked about in the first 2 games, have been ridiculous.
The drops have been bad. EPA, which is a stat I love, it's basically expected points for every time. He's at 1.3, which is 3rd worst in the conference. So kind of right where I expected statistically. I think just on the eye test, he looks as good as I thought he would. So I think it's, about what I expected from Maryland early on, potentially slightly better in certain units and slightly worse in others than I thought. But I think we'll know a lot, as Mike said, in once we hit week 4 with the Terps. Let's move on to men's soccer, who really kind of put away an inferior opponent, a commanding 4-0 win over Pacific. It was a really, really slanted game in the second half. Kind of a theme for the season. Maryland's really scored a lot in the second half. They scored 3 goals against Pacific, really tallied up kind of and wore out Pacific. I read a story that it was really hot out, and Maryland just seemed to kind of have better stamina than Pacific did. So good win for the Terps. Brendan, as we head into Big Ten play, kind of break down where we are at statistically and how this team looks with Wisconsin on Friday in Madison.
Yeah. The Pacific game was weird. Maryland scored a lot of goals in the second half, but Sasha seemed to still be pretty fired up. That's kind of classic veteran coach, team plays really well, but they didn't beat a great team, so you got to keep them honest. Heading into Big Ten play, this team has looked pretty solid. Luke Van Hoeklem and Saddam Masareka are the only players to have multiple goals. I think Masareka will finish the season as the team, leading goal scorer. 10 different people have scored, which is pretty huge for the team. They're spreading the wealth pretty nicely. Rocket Rita has, first of all, awesome name. Rocket first name is sick. He has 4 assists and he's looked pretty strong. Up the field, generating chances. And the biggest bright spot of this team has been goalkeeper Lauren Mack. He's allowed 2 goals on 15 shots on goal. If he keeps up that percentage, Maryland will be as predicted, one of the top teams in the Big Ten. And I kind of thought after the Georgetown game, his performance was maybe a bit fluky, but he's looked really, really, really solid. Obviously, hasn't played some of the best attackers in the country, but if he keeps up that level of play in the net, this team's going to be very solid. Wisconsin has played a bit of an odd season. They're 2-2 with losses to Portland and North Florida. The game is at Wisconsin, which has to scare you a little bit if you're Maryland. I do, however, think Maryland comes away with a win or a draw in this game. Just the way Mac's been playing, I don't see Wisconsin scoring that much. And, coming in with the offensive momentum, I give Maryland a good chance to score. So that's just my general thoughts heading into Big Ten play for men's soccer.
Let's talk about field hockey. Michael, tough outing against another ranked opponent. A common struggle kind of the past few years, it feels like we're talking about with Missy Maharg's team. They lost in a close one to number 8 Boston College. Now we'll have to see what happens after again they lost to Duke. So how Maryland will rebound is going to be really, really interesting. Just can you talk us just a brief recap of what happened in those two games and maybe what we can expect moving forward?
Yeah, they lost some pretty low-scoring games the past weekend in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Like you said, first loss to number 8 Boston College. Didn't score a goal that game, lost 2-0. And then they did score against number 5 Duke, but they lost that one 2-1. Duke, also the team that bounced them out of the NCAA tournament last year. So Missy Maharg having some struggles recently beating ranked opponents. Should get a little bit easier this upcoming weekend in the Terrapin Invitational. They're going to be playing Penn, who is terrible this year, on Friday. And then they're going to be playing number 9 St. Joseph. So that'll be another ranked test for Missy Maharg's squad. So it'll be interesting to see how they rebound. I expect them to beat Penn. If they can beat St. Joseph's, that shows a little bit of resilience with this group. And then hopefully that can be a turning point for them for the rest of the season. But it does not get much easier from them out there. After St. Joseph's, they're going to be playing number 18 Penn State, then number 7 Michigan, then number 10 Princeton, number 13 Ohio State. You kind of get the gist there. They have a really tough schedule.
That's
they can't
brutal.
be losing. Yeah, they cannot be losing ranked games.
It's a gauntlet for sure. Missy Maharg's team's going to have to figure it out and rebound quickly. They're trying to figure out how to beat ranked opponents. Our friend of the program, Michael Marciano, is trying to figure out how to just beat any opponent really right now. Women's soccer going through a slump. They dropped a couple of games recently, 0-2 over the last week against Florida and James Madison. Their defense has really dropped off a cliff. They started the year really well, shutting out opponents. I think they had a 3-game shutout streak, but obviously that's changed recently. JMU and Florida both really kind of took advantage of them. Now they head into Big Ten play. They'll take on Penn State. Since joining the Big Ten, Maryland's never beaten Penn State and only scored 1 goal against the Nittany Lions. That stat would be crazier if it wasn't Maryland women's soccer we're talking about.
Yeah, I think I did the math last year. It's like 30 or like 20-1, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be surprising. We obviously talked about it with Marciano last week. Like, he knows where this program stands. The biggest issue for this team has been when they go down in games like they did against Florida and like JMU, and when their backlines press back and they're just not allowing Maryland to get in the attacking zone as much. They can't generate any chances. And they scored against JMU, but they just didn't look very solid in terms of generating chances. And that's obviously something that we spoke about that he knows they need to work on. Penn State started the season off very strong. They actually were ranked 9th in the country. They tied JMU, so strong point for Maryland there. But until I'm shown something otherwise, I would expect Maryland to drop that first Big Ten game of the season. Volleyball totally bounced back this weekend, but as I expected, 3-0 wins against Old Dominion, William and Mary, UMBC. This week they got Delaware State, Davidson, and Wake Forest.
Adam Hughes will clean up this slate, ladies and gents. He will clean it up.
They got to beat Wake.
Out of conference, Adam.
I can't say that Wake Forest is a must-win, but that's a game they would win. That game, Wake Forest has not had a strong program for women's volleyball in the past couple of years, and they got to beat a team. They're best.
Is there a men's volleyball I know about, Brendan?
What?
Is there a men's volleyball that I don't know
about? I was about to say, very specific there.
I'm just, dude. You don't know anything that I don't. So yeah, I don't believe there is. I don't think there actually ever was in the history of this university. But yes, the volleyball team, whatever, their best out of conference win really can't be against like William and Mary or UMBC. So like, but that was my only point. They got to be Wake Forest.
They have to be for sure, especially the
yeah.
loss to Coastal Carolina. You kind of have to like to win one, you know.
And UNC, I mean, those weren't even strong opponents for the out of conference slate. Like those teams, like, you gotta win those.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move off of all the fall sports and head back to football. Brendan, surprisingly, leading the picks segment. B, give us your college football picks, your 5-1, and then give us also the Terps against Towson.
I'm 5-1. If Michael hadn't been doing the math all along, I probably would have won every other year, but who cares? I'm going to take Tulane -1.5 against Duke. South Carolina at home, only 5.5 point favorites against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's looked very strong, but I'm a Lenora Sellers truther at this point, and then I'll take Texas A&M +7 against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'll go next. I do want to be clear here, though. The reason that Brendan was bad the previous years was because he was betting the University of Massachusetts Minutemen literally every single week.
I wanted to take them against Iowa this week so bad, but it's just such a crapshoot. Like, the over-under is basically how many points Iowa's favored by. It's ridiculous.
I wish you had taken them.
And UMass lost to Bryant last weekend, so all right, that's all I got.
I'm going to be taking Clemson, favored by 3.5 points over Georgia Tech. I'm also going to be taking the over 46.5 in the Wisconsin-Alabama game. And then I'm going to be taking Georgia, favored by 3.5 points over Tennessee.
I'm off to somewhat of a slow start, but it's going to turn around this week, and it's going to start with my favorite pick of the week. Here we go. Give me the Minutemen, baby. The UMass to head into Kinnick and go plus 30.
This is unbelievable.
He just sniped.
He just took my freaking pick.
Plus 35.5 against the Hawkeyes. I was not scoring 35 points. Give me UMass to cover, baby. I'm going to follow that up by taking Ohio State -32.5 against Ohio. The Buckeyes are going to roll. And then finally, I'm going to finish it up. Game of the week in my eyes. I'm going to take Texas A&M +6.5 against Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's fraudulent. Give me the Aggies to go in.
I'll give you I took +7, so I'll give you +7 now. I'll give you a whole half point there.
Okay, that's fine. The Terps picks.
Oh, yeah, Terps picks.
Give me Maryland to blow out Towson. I'll go 48-7.
That was close to what I was going to go. I'm going to go 55-10.
I'm going to go 35-0. I don't think Towson scores. That would be kind of weird.
Only 35 points from the Terps?
They can't run the ball, dude.
That'll really hurt against Towson.
I mean, you don't know dude, Towson beat Michael Vick, so who knows?
I love it. You know who can run the ball? This week's terrific.
Oh, wow, Sam. Nicely done. Let's do it. This week's terrific Terp was the perfect shorter yet strong power back in college football. Rick Budenjek still holds the record for the team's lead in rushing touchdowns with 44. Considering he played in 44, which means he averaged 1 a game for those math nerds, not Mike, out in the audience, that's pretty darn impressive. The next closest is Lamont Jordan with 36. Budenjek grew up in Ohio and was a football superstar at Chalker High School. He was one of those kids who could just do it all on the field. He finished with 5,336 yards on the ground in high school, but did even more than that for the offense. That led him to the University of Maryland, where he made an impact right away. At around 5'8" and 212 pounds, he was a force to be reckoned with. That upset of Miami I talked about a few weeks ago, Budenjek was a big piece of that as well. He fought through injuries to play 11 games each season for Maryland, and his best year came in 1984, his junior year, where he tallied 15 touchdowns on the ground, 1 more receiving, and had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Interestingly, the 1984 season was the only year between 1982 and 1985 where he led the team in rushing. Well, how did I come across this Terp? Last week we were talking about the all-time leaders in Maryland scoring, and Budenjek is 4th on that list with 286 total points. He's the first non-kicker on this list. After his time at Maryland, he stayed in the area and played football in the NFL. He was drafted by Washington in the 7th round of the 1986 NFL draft. He spent 1 season in D.C. and then 2 with the Falcons. However, he only logged 14 total appearances in his 3 seasons in the NFL. He only had 2 starts, But regardless, Buttigieg is one of the greatest, if not the greatest rusher in Maryland football history, and they sure could use him this weekend against Towson.
And another great, terrific Terp by Brendan, a little topical with the Terps rushing touchdowns. Thank you all again for listening this week. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Also, make sure to catch some Catalyst hot dogs at SAQ Stadium during Saturday's game. I was supposed to get one the other week. I'll be getting one this upcoming week.
They do have gluten-free buns. Very clutch.
Yes, gluten-free buns, signature Texas chili sauce. I mean, they got everything you could want for it. Even the garlic knot dogs. Like, who has that?
Love that.
Anyways.
Appreciate you, Mike. Great promo. Best promo guy on the pod. Listen to Mike. Listen to us. We appreciate you for hopping on, and have a good rest of your week.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell Podcast. Nobody does it better.